Okay, let's unpack this with a question that I think hits right at the core of how many of us pray. We lift our hands, right? We declare, I receive the blessing of Abraham, or maybe I walk in the favor of David. It feels powerful. It's common. But here's the profound, maybe even unsettling thought PG Sebastian presents in his reflection. What if the blessing you're claiming comes with this hidden high-stakes cost you haven't actually budgeted for?
That is such an epic hook. And it immediately grounds us, in the kind of clarity the Steps Forever ecosystem is really built on. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into PG Sebastian's article, The Crash Before the Crown. And this conversation, it isn't just spiritual talk. It's practical. It's really about recognizing the structure needed to build something, a relationship, any big endeavor that's truly intended toward forever. Yeah. Built with clarity.
Right.
And I think maybe we've all been a bit guilty of this. Our mission today is to really confront this central tension. PG Sebastian observes that we often treat the Bible less like a record of, scarred, complex, difficult lives, and more like what he calls a catalog of benefits to be distributed. We use these huge names, Abraham, Joseph, David, like amazing shorthand for greatness or favor, and we're trying to just grab the glorious output without ever really checking the prerequisites on the label.
Exactly. And the core challenge PG Sebastian presents is realizing that these, well, monumental blessings, they aren't cheap slogans. They're not just free-floating promises waiting for the loudest amen. Sebastian insists they are always, without exception, attached to sacrifice. They're tested by fire, carried with immense personal cost. So here's the big question we're really digging into today. Are you willing to embrace the cave before the crown, the pit before the palace, the altar before the promise? Because those steps that come first, that's where the character gets forged. Okay, let's start with Abraham. Maybe the most requested blessing of all, right? Father of many nations. It sounds like the ultimate promise legacy fulfillment. But Sebastian argues that when we claim this, we just conveniently skip over the agonizing journey that actually validates it.
We absolutely do, yeah.
Yeah.
Sebastian emphasizes this blessing didn't just arrive in some flash of glory, not at all. It was delivered through decades of agonizing, sometimes just paralyzing waiting. We're talking lonely nights under the stars, year after year, with no biological child anywhere in sight. Can you imagine sustaining hope for 25 years when everything logical points to failure? That's like psychological warfare.
And if the decades of silence weren't enough, then comes the ultimate, just gut-wrenching test, offering up Isaac, the very son who was the promise. It's the cruelest kind of paradox. Sebastian really drives this home, the blessing we love quoting. It was completely wrapped in the pain of surrender, wrapped in a faith that honestly defied rational sense and in a trust that just refused to let go even when the waiting felt unbearable.
It really makes you reconsider the depth of commitment needed for any lasting promise, doesn't it? If we want the fruits of Abraham's faith, that fulfilled promise, we have to also be willing, somehow, to endure the decades of silence and those ultimate tests of sacrifice and, really, identity.
Okay, but I wonder, is PG Sebastian maybe being a little too harsh there? I mean, most people probably quote Abraham focusing on the blessing after it was all secured, the fulfillment part. But he insists we have to focus on the decades of pain first.
Well, I don't think it's harshness so much as it is demanding clarity. He's teaching us to look past the highlight reel, the social media version, and see the full, uncut feature film. The clarity that's core to the Steps to Forever ecosystem demands you acknowledge the whole journey. That promise of forever in a relationship. It sounds amazing, but it requires that Abraham-level surrender. Surrender of ego, of time, sometimes of immediate comfort. The blessing you receive has to be something you actually learned how to carry.
That really is the crucial moment for reflection right there, isn't it? So for you listening, if you pray for Abraham's blessing, are you actively, consciously signing up for the decades of silent endurance and the pain of ultimate surrender that comes with it? PG Sebastian is definitely making us consider the price tag.
Okay, now let's pivot to Joseph. His story is like the definitive rise from rags to running an empire story. But Sebastian makes it undeniably clear. Joseph's eventual blessing, his position of power, it was carved through relentless betrayal and, frankly, character assassination.
Oh, we absolutely rush past the middle part of his story when we celebrate the outcome. Just think about the emotional toll for a second. Betrayal by his own brothers, his own flesh and blood, years in slavery where his identity was basically reduced to property, and then false accusations from Potiphar's wife that land him unjustly in prison. And he wasn't just doing time, he was forgotten there. Yeah. Completely forgotten.
Right. And Sebastian notes there were countless moments where it must have seemed like God had just gone completely silent, radio silence. But What's fascinating here is the developmental sequence. He synthesizes it brilliantly. The Joseph we admire, the one standing at Pharaoh's right hand, running the largest economy in the world, he was absolutely forged in the pit and refined in the prison long before the palace ever came into view.
That psychological forging,
Yeah.
that's the prerequisite for the high position. And this applies so directly to modern relationships. If you weren't there for your partner's pit phase, if you didn't see the refining, the pain, the emotional tests they went through to get to their professional palace, you might not appreciate the character it took to sustain that success. You might even mistake their resilience for arrogance, maybe.
Exactly. That character, forged in isolation, is what kept Joseph ethical when he finally rose to power. The sheer weight of ruling an empire required the self-control he learned while surviving betrayal. It shows that in relationships, meant for forever, character development isn't just a nice bonus. It's the absolute foundation required to carry the combined weight of two lives.
And speaking of carrying weight under intense pressure, let's look at David, the shepherd-anointed king. We love celebrating his triumphs. PG Sebastian reminds us of the massive, often political price of that throne.
Yeah, David was anointed king by Samuel, sure, a divine endorsement. But then what? He spends years as a political fugitive. Think about the humiliation, the physical exhaustion, running from cave to cave, and not from some foreign enemy, but from the sitting king, Saul. Sebastian specifically points out he was hunted like prey by the entire army of Israel. The entire army.
Wait, okay, so Sebastian makes it sound like a full-on military operation, but David was divinely endorsed, so why wouldn't God just step in sooner? Doesn't that kind of suggest that divine endorsement doesn't exempt you from, like, institutional warfare or years of running?
It suggests precisely that. The endorsement is for the outcome, maybe, but it's not a bypass button for the process. David was mocked, misunderstood, betrayed by people close to him. Sebastian clarifies that David's throne wasn't some gift wrapped in silk. It was a seed he actually grew into through scars, tears, and really intense lessons in dependence on something much larger than himself. He had to be hardened and humbled before he was truly fit to lead the nation.
And what we often fail to realize is that all that running probably prepared him for the internal politics and betrayals he'd face after becoming king, like the Absalom rebellion, for instance. His throne was built, in a way, on the resilience he earned hiding in those caves.
And this leads us right to Sebastian's ultimate warning about how we approach these big concepts. He cautions that these blessings are not. They're not cheap slogans. They aren't marketing taglines designed for quick fix.
Oh, I absolutely love that distinction, cheap slogans. We treat them so casually sometimes, don't we? Like they're magic passwords.
We do, yeah. Instead, Sebastian defines these blessings as weights, responsibilities, and divine equippings, which means they are intrinsically attached to cost and fundamentally tested by fire. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the steps to forever ecosystem idea of building lasting love, it's profoundly relevant. The joy of a lasting commitment is directly tethered to the responsibility, the sacrifice, and the testing that came before it.
So this raises a really important question for all of us, especially those focused on building something that lasts. If a blessing, whether it's financial, relational, maybe positional, is truly a weight, what resilience do you need to be actively building today so you don't drop it tomorrow when it finally arrives? Like, are you training for the moment you actually have to carry the crown and deal with all the headaches that come with it?
That focus on training, on
Yeah.
preparation,
Yeah.
that's the exact shift PG Sebastian is calling for.
Mm.
Instead of praying purely for the outcome, the promotion, the spouse, the big breakthrough, he suggests our prayers should shift. Shift towards asking for the strength to walk the difficult journey that actually activates the blessings and makes them meaningful.
So we need to ask for like the endurance of Abraham, the emotional perspective Joseph had, the dependence David learned. We should be seeking the character, the resilience, the faith that shaped these foundational figures, and acknowledging that maybe the biggest weight we carry isn't the crown itself, but the character required to wear it without it crushing us.
And this has huge application to navigating the complexities of modern relationships, especially those unique challenges PG Sebastian often focuses on, like, say, intercultural or interracial marriages, maybe involving a Ghanaian partner, for example. The weight in those contexts isn't always glamorous or purely spiritual. Sometimes the weight is the decade-long effort to reconcile two vastly different family systems, two cultural expectations, two sets of in-laws. That takes Joseph-level character and David-level endurance.
The clarity here is just vital. Sebastian says the goal is that when the blessing comes, we are not just receivers, but carriers, ready, steady, and worthy of the weight. That's the profound difference between just a temporary victory and a truly permanent inheritance. Blessings are not just claimed, he writes, they are lived into.
That sentiment lived into, that's the absolute essence of the Steps to Forever ecosystem. It requires real, structural, clear-headed work. And speaking of structure, this is where PG Sebastian's unique background really gives him credibility in guiding people through this kind of hard work.
Absolutely. I mean, he brings deep expertise as a certified family counselor, author, coach. That's foundational. But he also applies this rigor and strategic mindset from his decades in corporate strategy and digital infrastructure. Think about it.
Yeah.
20 years in general insurance, now as the digital services manager at Enterprise Group Peels, overseeing complex digital assets across multiple countries. That's serious stuff.
Right. He takes that high-level strategic mindset, the absolute need for structure, security, clarity, and applies it to the most important thing, relationships. Through the Digital Undertow Initiative, he's literally leveraging digital precision to bring clarity to the, well, sometimes chaos of modern relationships. When he talks about building something intended toward forever, he means building it with the same kind of structural integrity you demand for a secure digital platform.
And that leads us perfectly to the final thought, really, one that encapsulates everything we've talked about today. The Steps to Forever platform's tagline is just so powerful because forever should be built with clarity.
And clarity means acknowledging that the crash, the cost, they're inherent parts of the journey. They're not bugs, they're features in a way. The blessings are coming, absolutely. But they are heavy. You must be prepared to carry the weight.
So we really encourage you explore more of the Steps to Forever ecosystem and PG Sebastian's profound work. Dive deeper into his insights on building strong, lasting commitment, particularly if you're navigating the beautiful, sometimes complex nuances of diverse relationships. Being a true carrier of blessing requires intention and resilience built long, long before the crown is ever placed on your head.